it's a project in other words. So there are certain concepts and certain studies that we expect you to present in the working. So uh, those aspects would be covered today. So this is a basic introduction into project management. So I'm going to cover the breadth of project management. I won't go into detail of certain segments. I won't go into detail, but I would cover the breadth. Next week, I would talk more on risk management, how you prioritize risk. We would talk about schedule management, where we would talk about how to understand the critical path, how you can expedite the project. Also, we would talk about stakeholder management based on power and influence they have on the project. Today, it would be more overall overview of the breadth of project management. Would that sound all right with you guys?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. So when talking about project management, we need to understand what a project is. Can someone tell me what do you think as a project is? Guys?
The task that you lay upon, maybe work on.
Yes, it's there, but it's not complete. So yes, as Ishan said, in a project you are expecting to deliver a task or output, but that task and output is a unique output. Um, that's where a project and operations change. For example, if we take a tire manufacturing company, as part of their operation, they would produce tires. They would produce a tire out always. That is not a project. That's operations, because that's routine. That's not unique, right? So that's one area where a project would change from operations. What are the other characteristics of projects?
Carried out by a group of people?
Yes. Project would be carried out by a group of people. Generally, their assignment is until the duration of the project. So again, projects and operations change there. Again, for operations also, we need a group of people to carry out the activity. But a project is a temporary endeavor. So once the project finishes, the people who work on the project would dissolve, would do other work. So in that way, projects and operations differ. What are the other characteristics of projects? So we talked about projects giving a unique output. We talked about the temporary aspect of projects. What are the other outputs? So projects has a definite beginning and an end. In other words, scope is fixed, and with the temporary nature, it has a definite beginning and a definite end. So there is a duration, a time span. Also, a project can be divided across several phases. So if we take a development project, you have like if you talk about software development, you have a blueprinting phase where you gather requirements, you understand the requirements, you get requirements clarifications, you document them, then you move to a development phase where you develop it, build it, and then you go to a testing phase where you would do quality assurance on the developed work products. And finally, you would do a user acceptance testing, UAT, with the customer, and then you would release it. When it comes to that end release, the project would consider done, and project resources would be dissolved. Um, so, project is a temporary endeavor with a definite beginning and an end. Can can span across multiple phases, which produces a unique output. So that's the definition of a project. Any questions, guys? Is that clear? Like you understand the difference between project and operations?
Yes.
Okay, good,
Yes.
great. So these all are examples of projects. Landing on the moon, building a new automobile, building a software package. These are all examples of projects. So if you talk about landing in the moon, there's a definite start and definite end. There's a scope which is fixed. You have to land in the moon. So in order to land, do that moon landing, you need to build certain things. You need to do some training, all that. So that's all part of that project. So it produces a unique output, the experience or ability to land in the moon. So it's temporary in nature. It has a definite start, definite end, unique output, and it may span across multiple phases. If you talk about building an automobile, again, it's a project because you have to you have a definite start, definite end. You have a scope which is fixed. It's a temporary engagement. It may have multiple phases like design phase, build phase, QA phase, and then finally you launch it. So it produces a unique output. If we take a software package, again, it's a unique result, which is again a project. So in that sense, would you consider building a house a project?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely a project because it has a definite start, definite end, a unique product. It's a temporary engagement, but once that is done, you have a finished product. Building gloves in factory, is that a project?
No.
Good. Why no? Yes, it's correct.
Because it's a continuous process. It's not you don't just end it.
Exactly. So when talking about building something in mass scale, it's a continuous process where it's like building tires or building certain mechanical parts. It's a autonomous process which continues. It does not have a definite start and an end. It's a routine activity. It does not produce a unique output. Always the output is predictable. So it's operations. Mainly operations differ from projects because of the unique output project produces. So let's take another example. You have a factory which build gloves. So in order to expand the production, you want to install another line. Is this a project or operations?
That's a project until its launch.
Perfect. It's a project because again, you're doing an expansion. It has a definite start, definite end, a unique output, which is the additional capacity, additional capability to increase capacity. So it's a temporary engagement where people get involved, do the expansion, and move out. So it's a project. Good. I hope you have a clear understanding of projects and operations now. Moving on. So there are reasons why we need projects. So I've listed down some reasons here, like new technology. With the change of technology, you have new projects. For example, let's take a tire building production plant. With the technology changes, with automation, with the new ways of doing things, you can increase your efficiency by incorporating them. So new technology would create an opportunity for a new project. Competitive forces. So when there's competition, in order to go beyond that competition, you can create projects. Material issues, political changes, market demand, economic changes, customer request. Like a customer would want a certain thing done in a certain way. It would request a project. So you would create a project. Stakeholder demands, legal requirements. So legal policies change, and with those legal policy changes, you would have to change the way you do things. Again, it becomes a project. Business process improvements. So it's part of continuous improvements. You change your business process in order to cater to the new process. You have to create a new project. Strategic opportunities, business needs, social needs, and environmental considerations. So I'll try to capture most of the reasons for project origins here. So these are only some of the major ones, but there can be other reasons as well for project origins. Any questions on this? Is this all clear for you guys?
Yes.
Okay, great. We'll move on. So projects versus operations. We spoke about this earlier as well. So projects is temporary, whereas operations are ongoing. Projects produce a unique output, where operations are repetitive in nature. Projects are closed after attaining the objective, so resources are dissolved and moved out. Whereas operations, the objective is to sustain business, increase efficiencies, and to maintain sustainability. So this is how operations and projects would differ. Why do you need to manage projects? I mean, why do you, so today, if we take developments, 1 out of 4 projects that enter development, only 1 out of 4 would move into market. Out of 4, projects that enter development, 1 would move into the market. So that is 75% scrap, only 25% throughput. That means there's a lot of failure. So you need to manage them closely. 31% of IT projects are cancelled before completion due to multiple reasons, requirement changes, different constraints, product which is being developed, not catering the requirements. So due to multiple reasons, 31% of the IT projects are cancelled before completion. Then finally, 42%, on large organizations, the products or projects they do, only 42% of the functionality they use. So if we have mobile phone with 10 features, only about 4 features we would use. So you build 6 features which is necessarily not adding value. So due to such reasons, it's important to manage projects closely to make sure that what you deliver is adding value to the end customer. So because of that, project management takes a very important role in today's business. So when it comes to different phases of project management, we have 5 main phases. Initiation, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. Any project would have these 5 phases. Initiation is where you start the project, where you do the initial estimates, where you do the blueprinting, where you gather requirements, have an understanding of what you need to deliver. Then comes planning phase. In planning, you would divide the work into smaller chunks. You would create a plan to deliver the product in phases or as in work products. So planning is very important because if you don't get the planning right, your execution would go wrong. So you need to spend a lot of effort and energy on planning it right. Then comes the execution. Execution becomes very smooth if the planning was done better. So execution is where you would materialize your planning. So if we take building a house, you would have a discussion with the architect. You would appoint a constructor. Constructor would come and talk to you, gather the requirement from you, would ask how many rooms you need. All that would be the initiation phase. In the planning phase, he would tell you, okay, we need to dig the foundation 3 feet deep. This many bricks would be needed. This many cements would be needed. This many wood is required, so on and so forth. Execution is where you would build it. So it's the labor work, the building work. Then you would move to the monitoring and controlling. So monitoring and controlling would happen simultaneously in all of these phases to make sure that you monitor the progress of each phase constantly. Whether you are going according to the plan, whether you are meeting the milestones, whether your earned value is what's your earned value versus what's the planned value. Are you achieving the planned value? Are you ahead of the schedule or behind the schedule? All that would be part of monitoring and controlling. So monitoring and controlling would observe and would recommend corrective actions to get the project aligned into the timeline, scope baseline, and budget baseline. Closing is where you finally deliver the project to the customer, hand over, and do the final dues with payments and all that. So any phase of project management would also have a closing phase. Any questions on this, guys?
Hi, Pasindu. I have a question. Hello.
Yes. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Before closing, if we have something maybe in the line of process, you have a error or you need to change something, you do it on the monitoring and controlling phase. So, do you add something to this?
So as part of execute, no. So you would not have another phase. So generally in execution, you have quality assurance also inbuilt.
Okay.
Meaning, let's say you're doing a software development. So what are the activities? What are the activities in software development? You would do a blueprint. That would be the initiation phase. You would do a timeline, which would be the planning phase. You would do a work breakdown structure. You would do a sprint plan. You would have a cost breakdown structure. So that's your planning phase. Then comes execution. Execution, you would build the software product. You would test it. You would verify, validate it with the customer. So all that is part of execution. So if there's a bug, you would find it in the execution phase as well. Monitoring and controlling is throughout to make sure that you are adhering to the budget, adhering to the timeline, adhering to the local, regulations, rules and regulations that governs the country or governs the organization. So monitoring and controlling is that. Closing is basically making sure that project is handed over properly. What are the checklists that you need to make sure to hand over? How you close the project, how you dissolve the resources, doing the appraisals, giving right recognition to the people who were in the project. All that is closing phase. Does that answer your question, Daham?
Yes, understood. Thank you, Pasindu.
No worries. Any other questions, guys? Okay, I'll move on. In project management, we talk about iron triangle. Iron triangle is time, cost, and scope. Obviously, quality sits in between. So, what does iron triangle say? If you make any change to one of these constraints, if you change time, in this, three constraints, time, scope, and cost. If you change one of these variables, one or both of these other variables would get impacted. What am I saying? For example, if you are supposed to deliver a project in 6 months, if the customer wants you to deliver it in 4 months, so you're cutting the time down. Either you would have to change the scope, you would have to reduce the scope, or you would have to increase the cost with the same scope. In other words, if you have to deliver the project in 4 months, which was planned for 6 months, you can accommodate it by reducing the scope. So you can meet the timeline of 4 months, or you can add more resources, which is extra cost for the project, and deliver the same scope in 4 months. So if you change the cost again, it would impact time and scope. For example, if you want to build a house with $10,000, if you say, I'm sorry, I only have $5,000. So if it was a 3-story house you were planning to build, maybe you can change it to 1-story house or a 2-story house. So your scope would change. Time would also change. In another example, if you change the scope, For example, now you want to build a mobile phone with certain features. So all of a sudden, your project owner comes and tells you, I need to add two other additional features. What could it happen? You would have to extend the timeline to incorporate the changes, or you would have to put more resources to do it in the same timeline, which is additional cost. So iron triangle refers to this relationship between the triple constraints: time, cost, and scope. Apart from these three constraints, you have other constraints that you need to keep a close eye on. You have quality, risk, and resources. One thing people do when they're pushed against the timelines, they sacrifice on quality. So quality becomes a constraint. So as a project manager, you need to ensure that you deliver the project with the right quality. What is right quality, guys? Right quality is delivering exactly what is supposed to deliver. Nothing less, nothing more. So, for example, you have a project to deliver a phone which can make phone calls. You decide to add a camera as an additional feature. Is it increasing quality, decreasing quality? What do you feel about it? So adding features, so adding or giving something which is more than what is promised, it's not good quality, it's bad quality. So giving something more than what is planned or agreed is called gold plating, and it is not good for the organization because it may result in resource burning. So that you have to maintain. Risks, again, you have to keep a close eye on it because risk can materialize into issues and they may change the output of the project. Resources is another important factor, a constraint that you need to keep a close eye on. Resources are required to deliver the project. You need to make sure they are motivated, that you have the right resources in the project in order to deliver the project. So as a project manager, you need to keep a balance and keep a close eye on all of these constraints. How do you define project success? So project success can be defined by 5 main aspects. With regard to schedule, meeting the schedule, delivering on time would define project success. With regard to cost, how much of a variance you have with the planned budget. You need to make sure you have minimum variance with the planned budget. So that's the cost-wise success factor. Quality needs to be reviewed timely and standards should be met. You should not deliver more, you should not deliver less. So that would define success in terms of quality. How satisfied your stakeholders are. These are qualitative checks you can do. You can send a survey to get their feedback. You can get them engaged in the project. So to ensure stakeholder satisfaction. Alignment to business case. The project we talked about, there might be a problem that would result in a project that would create a cost to start a project. You need to ask the question, has that business problem solved? Have we answered the business cost? So alignment to business case is also very important. So you need to measure the project success with regard to these 5 criteria. Any questions? Okay. I'll move on. So, what is project management? So, project management is the application of knowledge referring to project management knowledge as well as domain knowledge. For example, if you are a construction project manager, management knowledge alone won't help. You need to have construction knowledge. If you are developing a banking and financing app, project management knowledge alone won't help you. You need to know the BFS domain, the terminology, the technicality. If it's an IT project, you need to know the IT project management skills. So domain knowledge as well as project management knowledge. And you need to have the right skills, the leadership skills, the communication. We would talk about them in detail in a bit. You need to know the application of project management methodologies. What are you going to use? Agile method, waterfall method, iterative approach, ASAP development method when it comes to SAP projects, all that. Experience, how you leverage your past experience on different projects, how you build that expertise and experience to current project. Tools and techniques. We have a multitude of different tools and techniques. We would talk about some today. Also, project management is the application of knowledge, skills, methods, experience, tools, and techniques on project activities to meet the project objective. When it comes to the project structure, you have projects, programs, and portfolio. Can someone tell me the difference between portfolio, programs, and projects? Anyone? What is the difference between a project, program, and a portfolio? So, this is defined in this tier architecture to manage projects, programs, and complex portfolios easily. So portfolio is nothing but a combination of programs and projects. It's a risk-aversive technique. So, for example, if you are in hotel industry, these days you would suffer because you would not have business. So, what portfolio management does is you diversify your operations. You don't invest everything on one sector. So, if one sector doesn't do well, you have income or revenue in other sectors. So, for example, if we take Haley's today, Haley's has hotel chains like Kingsbury, Amaya Hills, and all that. It has its logistics arms. It has its distribution centers and warehouses. It has IT operations, Fentons, and all that. So even though hotels would be doing bad these days, they would be getting revenue on other streams. So that is why you need to have a portfolio. When you increase your investment, you need to diversify them. So managing your investment in a diversified environment or diversified sector is portfolio management. Under a portfolio, you may have multiple programs and projects. So program is a collection of related projects. For example, let's say now your assignment is to move operations which you have in Sri Lanka to another country, right? So that's a program. It's a project also, but it's a complex program because now when you move your operation, you would have to, if it's a, let's say, if it's a brewery, You need to move a brewery to another country. You would have to, first of all, build a factory, a brewery. So building a brewery would require, like, a certain skilled resources, certain, like, technology, construction based. So you need a construction project manager, and you would have a project for that. Apart from that, you would need to recruit people to work in that factory facilitation. So recruiting people at a mass scale would be another project. So another project manager who has expertise on human resource management would lead that project probably. So he would work with the different headhunting companies to recruit the right talent, maybe bring some people from Sri Lanka to there to train people, work on the change management aspect, all that. Then you might have to invest in technology, build machinery, which might require an industrial project manager. So all of them together would create that complete end result. So it can be looked at as a complex program also, with multiple projects lying underneath. So project, as we discussed, is a smaller unit where you deliver a unique product or a service at the end of the project timeline. Are you guys clear with the differences of portfolio, program, and projects? Do you have any questions?
Clear.
Clear, right? Let's move on. So portfolios should be aligned with the strategy of the organization. Programs manage related projects and they manage the interdependencies. Projects deliver outputs that support the program or the portfolio. Functions of portfolio management ensures that selected components, projects or programs align with the organization's strategy, assess the risk of the components, assess the ROI or expected return from selected components, assess the organizational resource capability, especially if you are diversifying into unknown territory. You need to understand whether you have the right skilled resources in the organization who can steer you across this unknown territory. Another important functionality of a portfolio manager is to create a balanced portfolio, meaning risk should be balanced out. When it comes to program management, it focuses more on optimization of resource utilization, maintaining alignment with regard to organizational objectives, centralizing issue resolution. So risks and issues can manage centrally for those projects which are under that program, and management of interdependencies and relationships among projects in the program. So role of a project manager, we spoke about this, so I'm not going to go into any detail here. So these are some of the skills which you expect from a project manager. So from a project manager, you need leadership skills. Project manager is a leader. He would guide the team. He would make decisions. So you need to have leadership skills in order to become a project manager, or you expect leadership ability and skills from a project manager. Project manager needs to be a super communicator, a very good communicator, because communication is a key. He needs to communicate requirements from the customers to the project team's concerns to the customers and stakeholders, needs to escalate risks and issues in a timely manner. So communication plays a very crucial role in a project manager's life. Information technology today has become a very important part in project management, because today we rely on automated tools and so technology in creating project plans, managing projects. So there are multiple tools which is online, and it uses information technology. So project manager is expected to have some sort of a working knowledge on information technology. Uh, Again, a project manager needs to be a good problem solver. With when it comes to projects, you would always have problems with regard to resources, with regard to requirements, with regard to timelines, budgets, all that. So he needs to find workarounds. He needs to solve these problems on the go. So project manager is a problem solver as well. He also is responsible for his balance sheets, profit and loss statements. So he needs to have a working knowledge on accounting principles. Also, he would have to make decisions on purchasing. Of course, when it comes to big high level, like, extreme purchases, like, he can depend on the procurement team, but day to day, he may have to take certain calls under a certain budget, which requires purchasing knowledge. So he needs to have that knowledge. Even on procurement side, he needs to have a working knowledge in order to evaluate vendors, to understand techniques in order to get a competitive quote, negotiation skills. All that are expected of a project manager. I hope this is clear and straightforward. Okay.
Yep.
Good. So guys, what do you think is the difference between a project manager, a functional manager, and operations manager? Any idea?
The project manager is more of a hybrid of the other two.
What do you mean exactly?
Meaning he has to have some degree of knowledge or capacity in the areas of operational and functional management also, whereas the other two are slightly more specialized.
Yes, correct in a way, Deshan. So project manager is generally responsible on a temporary endeavor, meaning project manager's role is a temporary role. Functional manager and operational managers are permanent roles. Project manager would depend on, like, certain functional managers, operation managers to deliver the project for that temporary engagement. Project manager is basically the person assigned to perform that certain work product and to deliver that work product. So once you achieve the objective of the project, project manager's role disappears. So it's a role. On the other hand, functional manager is a line manager. He focuses on a functional unit or a business unit. For example, like, I'm sure you in your different organizations, you would have HR managers, you would have finance managers, you have procurement managers. All of those are functional managers, meaning they oversee that particular functional unit. HR manager overlooks the HR aspects. Finance manager overlooks the finance aspects. Finance manager does not look into HR aspects of the finance resources who are reporting to him. He's a functional manager, right? So he works on the functional line. On the other hand, operational managers or the operations managers are responsible for ensuring the business operations are efficient. So they would rely or pull functional managers to get their opinion and to increase efficiency in operations. So again, operations managers' main responsibility is to make sure business is sustainable, operations is sustainable, and operation runs smoothly and efficiently as possible. Clear?
Yep.
Okay. Moving on. We have different organization structures. We have 4 different organization structures: functional, metrics, projectized, and composite. Do you know the difference of these organization structures? Any idea? Anyone has any idea about these organization structures?
Not really, no.
Okay.
Not most of us.
All right. Okay. So let's go through each one of them. We'll talk about functional organization. So it's similar to the functional manager. In a functional organization, if you are doing a project is managed by the functional manager. You might assign a project manager to do the project or to do certain activities in the project, but project manager's power in a functional organization is very less. Project manager acts as an expediter or a project coordinator in a functional organization. So all the resources report to the functional manager. Functional manager decides the priority and allocates resources. So project manager's authority is low, team members are loyal to functional managers. Multiple projects may compete for same resources. Functional project managers, features. He acts as a project expediter, little formal authority. He administers more than managing the project, coordinates communication, generally would report to the functional manager. So he acts more like a project coordinator. He helps the functional manager, does not really make decisions in a functional organization by a project manager. Before matrix organization, let's talk about projectized organization. Projectized organization is the opposite of functional organization, where you have a project manager who has the ultimate authority, ultimate power. Project manager would hire the resources. He would interview and get the resources onboarded. He would pick the resources. He would do the appraisals of the resources. The disadvantage of a projectized organization is there can be resource utilization problems. For example, in a software development project, if you take 5 developers and 2 QA resources, 2 QA resources does not have necessarily much work in the initial phases. They can work on test case writing, test case designing, test scenario writing, all that. But their actual work starts after some development is done. So in that aspect, there can be utilization issues. Also, since after the project is dissolved, resources would go to bench. They don't have a clear career progression plan per se. So those are the disadvantages of a projectized organization. Now, what is a matrix organization? You know projectized, you know functional. So matrix organization is a blend or a hybrid of functional and projectized organization. Again, matrix organizations can be divided into 3 subsections: weak matrix, balanced matrix, and strong matrix. Weak matrix resembles a functional organization more, meaning project manager has low power, functional manager has more power. Strong metrics, on the other hand, resembles more a projectized organization, where project manager has more power, functional manager has less power. On the other hand, balance metrics is where project manager and functional manager both shares the same level of authority and power, and they make decisions together. In a strong matrix, project manager does the appraisal. In a weak matrix, functional manager does the appraisal. But resources reports to both project manager and the functional manager in matrix organization. Is it clear, guys?
Yep.
Okay. Now, what is a composite organization? Composite organization is where you have all three previously discussed organization structures, meaning it might be a functional organization. For example, like, let's take an organization. It's a functional organization. It has a project. Functional manager takes the ownership. He appoints a project manager, but functional manager runs the project. So in a functional organizational structure. Now, there is another requirement which requires a strong project management knowledge. So to deliver that piece, you hire a project manager, and with that project manager, you delegate a team of resources for that project manager, and that project manager manages the project in a projectized environment. Meaning, for all those resources, project manager would have ultimate power. Project manager, they would report only to the project manager. They are dedicated for the project, and they would be managed in a projectized environment. Also, there might be some other projects where you might have a matrix structure, where you have a functional manager, project manager, and a project manager both managing it, and resources reporting to both of them. So all of these structures being present in one organization is the composite organization structure. Is it clear? Any questions, guys? If there's anything unclear, please ask. Okay, we'll move on. For project managers, you have a PMO. PMO is Project Management Office. Depending on organizations, you have different types of PMOs: supportive, directive, and controlling. Supportive PMO is where like PMO would provide templates and support the project manager. Controlling PMO would do everything that a supportive PMO does. Apart from that, controlling PMO would also audit to make sure project manager does the things according to the company guidelines. Directive PMO, on the other hand, directs the project manager to do certain things in a certain way, more authoritative. Now, this is very important for you guys. How do you prioritize projects? When you have a project, you need to do a SWOT analysis in order to understand the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and strengths, right? What is helpful, what is harmful. Even in your assignment, you need to do a SWOT analysis. For example, now let's take an example you have a Lions brewery here. You want to move your operations to South Africa. So you need to do a SWOT analysis before starting the project. What are the strengths? You have the expertise on brewery. It's a different blend. You have the know-how. You have skilled resources. that would be your strengths. What are the weaknesses? You have not used in South African market, in order to compete, you need to have a lot of automation. Technology might be a slightly weak aspect for you, so it's a weakness. You need to see how you can improve on them. What are the threats? There might be other brands who has higher market share, so you need to do a market analysis to understand how you can penetrate it. So you need to highlight the threats. What are the opportunities? Even though you have other brands which are established in the market, with a certain blend, you would be able to penetrate it. All the other brands would have one blend, whereas you can provide a variety of blends, which might be opportunity. So likewise, you have to put this SWOT quadrant, and based on that you can evaluate whether to take the project on or not. So strengths and opportunities are helpful things, weaks and threats are harmful. So for weaknesses and threats, you need to have, they generally would result in risks. So you need to have a risk with regard to threats and weaknesses, and you need to have a mitigation strategy or a contingency plan. What would you do if that risk materializes? So another thing we need from you for the assignment is a risk register. Today we would not talk about the risk register, but next week we would go into detail about the risk register, how you highlight the risk, how you rate the risk, how you prioritize the risks. So that's another important thing you need to do in your assignment. Any questions on the SWOT analysis? I guess this is basic, everyone knows about SWOT analysis, but again, for the assignment, we expect a slide on SWOT analysis. And we also expect a slide on pestle analysis. What is pestle analysis? Again, it's a evaluation criteria with regard to 6 features: political, economical, social, technological, environmental, and legal. So you can have a table, and with regard to each of these areas, what are the opportunities? How you assess the project? Politically, if you are moving to South Africa, is the country politically stable? If there's political instability, that might not be a good reason to go there. So you need to evaluate the move in terms of political stability. Economical stability. Now, with operations in certain countries, you have tax reductions. For example, if you invest money or in North Africa, you have tax benefits because you are helping people by giving them jobs, improving their life standards. So there are certain economical benefits you can gain. Also, you need to talk about their currency fluctuations. Is it worthwhile to have money in their currency or have investment there? Is it stable? That you need to evaluate. Social aspects. Now, if you're going to have a beef burger outlet in South India, what is the social complexity with the religion, whether people would be accepting that kind of a product, how will you be able to penetrate the market there, will you have enough customer base there? So you need to understand the social background, what kind of people you have, what is their level of poverty, or like salary levels, with regard to social well-being. So with all that, you need to evaluate the legal aspects. Uh, what are the legal aspects in that country? Are they supportive of you to move there, or are there any complications in you having operations in that legal entity? Environmental aspects. So if you are planning to have a brewery in North Africa, do you have enough access to clean water for the brewery? Or how are you going to facilitate brewery? Uh, because of the excessive sunlight, you might use solar panels to cover up the factories. So you would get a benefit from economically. So all that you can talk about when it comes to environmental aspects, technological aspects. What are the technological constraints you have? When it comes to operating complex machinery, is the people capable of doing that? Can you get parts easily to operate, have your operations running there? Do you have enough access to technology that is required by your operations? So all these you need to talk about in a table maybe. So all of these aspects you need to cover. Any questions on SWOT and tested? Guys, I'm asking because it's very important, and we expect you to have 2 slides on these 2 aspects, definitely.
We are good.
Okay, good. Moving on, project priority matrix. So you have something called a project priority matrix, which is activity which is performed by the project sponsor. So I told you earlier, all the projects have the triple constraints: time, scope, and cost. With regard to projects, you have to fill this matrix. What is a constraint? What is the enhance? What is accept? So in certain projects, timeline, absolutely you can't move. Scope, sometimes in some projects you have some flexibility. Cost, generally you accept. Depending on project to project, it changes. For example, if we talk about a project to have Olympic Games, once the date is fixed, is there a way to change the date? Absolutely no. So timeline is constrained for that project. It's a constraint. It's absolutely fixed, written in stone. There's no way you're going to change it. When it comes to scope, you can do some changes. Meaning, like, for example, for the opening ceremony, if you planned an event by Shakira, you can maybe you can cancel it off. So scope, you can do certain changes. Cost, you have more flexibility. I mean, if you plan a budget of 10 million USDs, and if it goes for 11 million USD, you won't mind that much. Cost, you have more flexibility. Now, if we take another project, landing on the moon, what do you think is the constraint there? If we take landing in the moon as the project, what is the constraint? What is it that you can't absolutely change? Scope? Who's saying scope? Guys, what do you think? So yes, if you are to have a project to land in Moon, scope is your constraint. Scope you can't change. You have to make sure you spend the right amount of time in ensuring you cover the scope. Cost you would enhance or accept, even like timeline you if you plan the project to do in 1 year, if it if it takes 1.5 years, still you would agree. Cost also likewise. So cost and time you have more flexibility there. Scope you don't have flexibility. So project priority matrix is a matrix defined by the project sponsor, and with regard to that, project manager needs to manage the project. Any questions so far? Okay. So I have a few more slides on project life cycles and phases. I would cover them quickly and we would wrap it up for today. First graph I have is on cost and staffing level. Any question?
No.
Okay. So in a project, monitoring and controlling, I've not put it as a phase here because monitoring and controlling happens throughout initiation, planning, execution, and closing phases. It happens throughout. So I did not put it as a phase. So in different phases, how your costing and staff level changes. In the initial phase, initiation, you don't have to spend much cost. Also, you don't have to have much resources either. If we take a software development project, in the initial phase, you would have few resources, you would do a client visit to gather requirements. There, you don't need much resources, so you don't need to spend more cost here. As you move along to planning phase, you would have to add more resources. Now, in the planning phase, you would have to do estimates, you would have to take some tech leads involved, QA leads involved, some architects involved for the software development project. So you would have more resources, your cost would also increase. Also your resources, staffing level would increase. Then you would progress to execution. Execution is where you have most of the resources. You have the entire team working here. Right? And this is where you have the highest cost. Then you come to the closure. In closing, you would deallocate resources. As the project finishes, as the engagement finishes, you would deallocate them. So your costing and staffing level would decrease. Clear? Risk over time. When does the project has the highest risk? Project has the highest risk in the beginning. Because in the beginning, you have not invested anything on the project. You have not spent money. So it's easy to anyone to pull the plug. So risk is at its highest in the initiation stage. Planning to execution to closure, risk would go down. Impact of risk over time. This is what happens if the risk materializes. right? In the initial stage, if a risk materializes, you have to do a small change only. So impact is less. In the planning stage, as the time move on to planning to execution to closure, impact of that risk would increase, right? So if you have to do a change in the closing stage, you would have to change a lot of things, meaning that change would result in a huge cost impact for you. So impact of risk is at its peak in the closure stage. Towards the initiation stage, the impact of risk is less. Do you understand this, guys? Do you understand the difference between risk over time and impact of risk over time? Guys?
Yes.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Stakeholder influence over time. Again, stakeholder influence is it's peaked in the beginning, but towards the closure, stakeholder influence decreases. So as the time progresses, stakeholder influence goes down. Yeah, so that's about it I wanted to cover today in terms of project management overview. Do you guys have any questions on what we covered so far? Any unclear area, maybe even with regard to the project assignment? Are there any questions that I can help you guys with?
Not right now, we guess.
All right, okay. So Tuesday, I think we have the other session. So what I'm planning to do for Tuesday is to do a deep dive on risk management and stakeholder management, because again, these two areas we would expect you for the assignment also. Also, we would talk about critical path management, how you can manage the timeline, how you can expedite things in your timeline. Okay. So if you don't have any questions, we can wrap it up today. I speak to you on Tuesday. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank